is up, Blind Duet fans? This is the first ever live together, in person, in the flesh, Blind Duet podcast.
Here we are.
Contrary to the popular fan theory, Tom and I are in fact not the same person talking to themselves.
Have you heard that feedback?
Yeah, I've heard this fan theory. People think that we are in fact one person that just talks to themselves with different voices.
Oh no. Oh, well, I thought it was that maybe they couldn't tell our voices apart.
Oh, also possible. I've heard that we do sound kind of similar sometimes, but that's not true. We're here together for the first time in a while, like a year.
It's been a year,
seeing each
man.
other. Last time we were totally slacking on recording podcast stuff. I remember we thought about doing it, and then in retrospect, we were like, oh man, we didn't do anything. But
we're not in New Orleans. We're not in LA. We're in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. First time for both of us here. We are coming from the famous, the world-renowned Artist Loft in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
So we're in Tulsa because a company that I used to work for called Sound Diplomacy puts on conventions called Music City Conventions. And these are, it's a lot of panel talks about issues related to music and placemaking, music economies. I've got a little thing right here. Topics covered at Music Cities Tulsa.
Yeah, tell us what they got.
Global music city policies, music for economic and social development, music and education, the role of music in future cities, city and place branding, et cetera, et cetera. So how music and urban planning, how it all meshes together. And we met a lot of really interesting, really brilliant people. We heard some great panel discussions.
First thing we saw was something about creating music or art spaces, like creating creative placemaking. That's what it's called, which I actually didn't realize is like a whole thing. I guess I've been a part of these things growing up. You know, I was definitely a part of spaces that were creative places, I guess, specifically thinking about something like the Jazz Market in New Orleans is definitely one of those places that's a creative place.
I would argue Frenchman Street
in a way. I think it's just less.
I think it's less intentional.
Less intentional, and there's less public funding for it as well.
Oh yeah.
I think part of what I learned yesterday about the placemaking is that there's actually money in government budget for these kind of spaces, and
there should be.
And if there's not, there should be. And how can you actually get involved enough to get that funding in the right place? You know, in the right community space, and how to pick these places and all that stuff. So I've been on the receiving end of a lot of that stuff without even realizing it, growing up for sure. And it was cool to hear kind of that's a career that people go into. I wasn't really aware of that as a career, being someone who creates creative places.
It seemed way more policy heavy, like you probably studied urban planning or something in real estate
or
development.
Like urban planning plus poli-sci kind of vibe.
Yeah.
It definitely had a lot of political science playing the politics game to get that money in the right place.
And then after that session, we got distracted outside. We missed the next session because we had so much fun talking to Sleepy.
Yeah, Sleepy.
So Sleepy,
AKA Richard Floyd. Richard Floyd
is from Indianapolis, and he does a little bit of everything. So he is a drummer. So he says that, you know, he tries to tour at least 1 week a month. So a very creative musical individual. And he has his hands in a lot of different projects around Indianapolis. He's the talent booker for the Indianapolis Jazz Festival. Cool.
Correct. Yeah.
He also runs a nonprofit that is music education based. They are building a 24-hour recording and practice space, something that I have been very interested in for New Orleans. So I do need to connect with him about that. That has this huge educational component, making sure there's like that mentorship piece for the next generation of musicians. So we had a lot to talk about, and y'all know a bunch of the same people.
Yeah, we did know a lot of people in common. There's a number of people that are in New Orleans that he knew, as well as even some people that I know in LA. And even actually kind of connecting to the first thing, right, was the idea of the Squeeze House, which we've mentioned before on the podcast when Teddy Ruxpin was on, talk about a creative place. I mean, that's like an insanely, and those guys are just doing it themselves, which I've been incredibly impressed by, getting to watch from afar as well as actually get to participate as well. You know, the one time I was there, but getting to participate as well. And it turns out that this guy Sleepy knows a number of those guys as well. So
yeah, they like all play together. They're all in a
they
band
play together, and then I think I'm going to get it wrong, I think, but it's something like his bass player is now their bass player or something like that.
Anyway, there's nothing set in stone, but we're hoping that Sleepy he won't be a stranger to the podcast.
Yeah, we would love to have him on the podcast. I think we're gonna probably reach out to him once we get back to our regularly scheduled lives.
Mm-hmm. The highlight of the conference for me, and I think for you,
very clearly the highlight of the conference.
There was what am I trying to say? A premiere of a documentary called Fire in Little Africa about the making of an album, also called Fire in Little Africa.
So picture this: Greenwood Ave, Red Man's Land. See the brilliance built by a black man's hand. It was for us, by us, false prop, plot us, hold up, try us, peg leg, got us, we radiate. These jewels cost. This shine ain't free, and for a buck they twist the rubrics of our history. But we're what it looks like when we got our own backs, and we're what it looks like when you build it back black. We're what it looks like in 100 years' time. Got the audacity to walk up out these ashes and shine. We shining. How y'all doing?
So this record is a collaborative album along with a documentary, and then to go further, they, I think, are also starting a nonprofit, and they're doing some community outreach, and they have curriculum, they have all this stuff. But the documentary was specifically about an album that was created to commemorate the centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre, which was in 1921, and this was intended to come out in 2021, 100 years later.
Yeah.
And just not only was the documentary was incredibly powerful. I mean, I as like someone who has made a lot of records with a lot of people and been fortunate enough to be in kind of a collective of local musicians and producers, to see on screen that process with other creatives from another city was incredibly beautiful. And then on top of that, the underlying message and purpose of what they were creating to bring light and to, in a way, heal, I think in some sort of way it felt like almost, or create some sort of a positive thing out of something that's one of the most, if not the most horrific tragedies that has happened in our country ever, maybe, right? Like,
yeah. But all right, to back up really quick. So this was a collaboration of hip hop artists, singers, producers, from poets from all over the state.
Mostly Tulsa, but yeah, some Oklahoma City as well, from what I understand.
Yeah, and they highlighted a couple folks from like one city out on the edge.
True. It was people from outside of Tulsa.
And I'm not sure we had a total number on the roster, but it was a ton of
guy,
artists.
Simon. His last name was Simon.
No, it was Simon.
Simon. He was saying that they had a list of like 150 people or something that came through. It was
over 5 days, I think. They
5 days,
multiple locations. So the scale of this, the ambition, it was an incredibly ambitious project, and they ended up creating 150 tracks.
Exactly, 150 tracks that they then had to pare down to a 21 song album. Which anyone who has ever had to choose songs for an album, or if you're a photographer and you've had to choose photos for a photo book, or you've had to choose paintings for a gallery opening or something like that, it's really hard to pare down your work, especially when it's finished. I mean, these were 150 finished songs to pick 21. So they talked about that process as well.
And the documentary, obviously it showed like the creative process. It was a lot of footage of folks in these makeshift booths. They were not in a recording studio. They weren't in any place treated. they were in 2 locations. Yeah, it was like the
Yeah, it was
Greenwood
2.
Cultural
It was-
Center.
From what I understand, it looked like in the documentary, it's 2 is the Greenwood Cultural Center. And then the other place is actually a mansion of the guy who made the call of the race massacre, essentially. Like, he's the guy who started it. And this mansion is where he died or was killed. And this is like, they turned it into they totally flipped it upside down, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, it's obviously no longer, it belongs to his family. Somebody else bought it, and now they were able to actually record.
The old white dude.
Yeah, old white dude. Yeah,
I missed
racist old white dude.
Yeah,
that originally owned it.
I missed his exact role in the massacre.
I will say
they alluded to him. I don't think they ever.
From what I understood, it was like, I don't know if he was the governor at the time or the mayor at the time, but it seemed like he was the initiator of the massacre.
And now it's owned by ex-Cowboys all-star running back Felix Jones.
Is that that's who it owns?
Yeah,
Yeah. So he owns it now, and he let the guys that were making the
Fire in Little Africa,
Africa crew makes and record some of their record there. Which, hearing them talk about that process as well was really powerful to know that they were able to actually write in this sort of, I guess I would call it like almost haunted space, right? With just haunted with negativity.
And there were different reactions.
There were very different reactions.
There was one artist who's like, I don't, that dude has no bearing on my life anymore.
Right,
like,
right.
I'm not going to give him the time and space in my brain.
Mhm.
And other people were a little more reverent and like, there's no wrong answer. I appreciate how there's so many different perspectives in Tulsa or in Oklahoma about the Tulsa massacre. And like, this was by Black creatives for Black creatives for a wider audience, but specifically, I think, amplifying a lot of Black creatives in the state of Oklahoma, like resonating with this message, commemorating the 100 years anniversary.
And I think a state that, again, just like the Tulsa massacre, is not really known about enough outside of the state. I think that was also sort of like an underlying thing, a tone of the record too, is they were highlighting artists that also weren't really that well known outside of the state, which is,
there's not a single
whether
name that
intentional or not, or unintentional, it seems like that was part of it.
had you heard of any of those?
No, and everyone was amazing. Like, that's the other thing too. It's not just like we're talking, not just anybody. It was like every single track, every single verse, every single song was amazing.
Yeah, it was like I got a lot of goosebumps.
Yeah,
through the
no,
whole
I
thing.
think so. And I think the more that we can talk about these difficult things to talk about, the more we can understand and learn, the more we can have fellowship with people that are different, I think too. And like, especially when you're looking at something like music that's so universal. Someone from another country even can hear these songs, and then they're like, well, what is this? And they can go in and learn more, and then watch the documentary where they talk about, like, the documentary starts explaining what happened very quickly, and you get it immediately, and then it goes into the album in the process. So
I didn't get a chance to ask a question. So there was a screening of the documentary, and then there's a panel with the
executive producer,
an MC, the executive producer, and the director of the film, and the executive producer of the album.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great hearing more from their perspective, sort of what the next steps are for Fire in Little Africa. They're making a whole 501c3. They've got some educational resources, which we will circle back to, because I know that you brought that up about, like, we didn't learn about this.
No.
And I was so curious to hear, like, there's so many themes in that documentary. It's remembrance, and it's commemorative. It's also clearly a celebration of who
these artists
are, and the Tulsa hip hop community, which is unknown to us not being from here. Like, it's clearly small, but very tight knit and scrappy. I was so curious to hear from them what themes they wanted Black audiences to get from that film and what themes they wanted white audiences to get from that film.
That would have been a pretty good question, a pretty heavy and good question to ask them, actually. But I think
we'll tag them.
Maybe we'll hit them up. We definitely got to have, now that we know about the Tulsa community, it'd be great to have some of those artists on the show as well.
Yeah.
But I think, well, maybe I'm not really an authority to speak on that. So
what themes did you get as a white audience member?
Well, I think something we were talking about before the cameras were rolling too, which again, like I think that is the number one most important thing about showing and creating art based off of these horrible instances in American history, whether they're current or in the past, is that it's intended to spark discussion outside of, if it's in the classroom, outside of the conference that you're at, outside of the event. It's always special and just great. I don't know if I think of a better word, when necessary to have these kinds of difficult conversations after the fact. Reflect on it and then have another conversation. And I think what we were talking about before was just like how we're both from New Orleans. Obviously, there's like, Texas is a pretty big state, but I mean, that's what kind of separates us from Oklahoma, essentially. Like we're like 2 states away, pretty not that far ultimately. And I personally, and I almost want to say embarrassingly, but I don't think that's really the right word, like didn't know about the Tulsa massacre until I was an adult, for sure.
I think maybe I heard it mentioned, but I didn't know what it was or where,
or really understand what that meant. No one had shared that with us in a formal or informal setting. Whereas there are other instances in American history and world history that are on a similar level that we are made aware of, without getting like too specific. There's definitely a lot of those types of things that we know about, but this one in particular is kind of not talked about enough, for sure, outside of the state of Oklahoma, or maybe even not enough here previously. I don't know the answer to that.
So that's what I think is I think that would be very interesting to know and understand, where I think there is this new national reckoning post Trayvon Martin, like the Black Lives Matter movement in the, when did it really kick off? 2012, 2015, 2016. And then post George Floyd, like Black Lives Matter and an understanding and reconciling with like race relations in America is kind of at the cultural zeitgeist. And we are seeing that very well reflected here in Tulsa, where we almost by accident, like just on our route to get to the conference, we walked through Black Wall Street. We walked, and even just
learning when I got here from this documentary that Black Wall Street was an entire neighborhood, not just one street.
Yes, of course.
It's the entire Greenwood neighborhood. The Greenwood area was like, they said 4 square miles or something like that.
The significance is physically well marked.
Very much so now. And today, I don't know if that's new or if that's...
That is what I'm so curious about. Yeah. In 2003, what did that neighborhood look like? Was it still like... so was the historical significance so well marked or advertised? And it's very clearly...
Definitely like the cultural center looks pretty new. So it seems like that was a newer thing. But yeah, that's a good question too, that I would like to learn more about now after being here as well and feeling that. And I think something else from the documentary, it definitely made it apparent that Black people in Tulsa, especially young Black people in Tulsa, are still very much affected by this experience, aware of this experience, and healing from this experience 100 years later. Well, and again, I don't know if I'm 100% the authority to say that, but
dude, we're super not the authority.
Yeah, we're super not the authority on that.
So clearly this documentary made a pretty major impact on us.
It was huge.
It was so well done, and it was really interesting. It was gripping to there's an old hip hop documentary called Something from Nothing. As like that is essentially what hip hop is, and I think that is such an apt term for the experience of, I mean,
creating music, honestly.
Really, creating music, but like specifically hip hop, and this documentary to me, or this project, this album, really stamped that in a really powerful way.
Yeah. And it was also another thing they talked about that was really cool was hearing kind of what they're doing post documentary. They're like one of the guys, he works in a high school where they have a recording studio, and he's kind of piloting this program where kids are actually able to write and record music and record themselves rapping and singing, which is always great. I think anytime you can get kids to express their musical creativity in a real way, where it's like they're actually recording and he's even releasing this music so people can hear it. I mean, that's really special. And when you have government funding behind that, it's even better. And hearing about their curriculum as well, which I need to do some more research on. But the fact that they've actually created a way to talk about these difficult things in the classroom with kids, I think is really important.
Yeah. So go listen to Fire in Little Africa.
Yeah, this was not intended to be an entire but why not though? At the same time, they deserve it. I would think that was amazing. Like it definitely, like we said, had a huge impact on us. It was the highlight of the weekend, probably getting to see that and hear them talk. Definitely the highlight of the conference and worth the trip even just to experience.
It was pretty slick. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, just incredibly well done, I think too.
But the day was not over.
Right.
Technically before Fire in Little Africa, that's when we met Bryce.
Right.
Bryce works for The Well. And I am gonna forget the name of his program, but we can definitely like link it somewhere.
We'll link it somewhere. We'll put something on the screen, maybe. I don't know.
Bryce works for again, like a music education nonprofit, but with a strong mental health, social, emotional learning focus. Partners with elementary schools, pre-K, elementary schools.
They have programs that sound like all the way up through high school as well, but they said they mostly are in elementary schools.
For schools to it's like daily lessons essentially, where they're
like brain break, mental break, mental health, quick little start your day with some music, meditation, reflection.
That's it. It's like start your day with some music, meditation, and reflection, where it can be pumped in through the announcement system, or just a teacher can play it in the classroom. So some music of significance. It sounds like they started with classical music and they're building their library of music, video game soundtracks, movie soundtracks, contemporary music. And the idea is students and teachers would listen to this music together, and then there are some prompts, some questions for everyone to think about, marinate on, that are really healthy and positive. And they have been, it sounds like, very successful.
Pretty successful, which I think was really impressive to me, like the numbers and everything. They were talking about he was talking about the number of schools that the program is in.
And over 100,000 students impacted every year.
Which is amazing.
That's wild.
I know, like when I was doing some education stuff, I tried to do some of this stuff on my own, but I think part of it being part of the school culture is really important. If you're one teacher that's just trying to do this, is like, oh, every time I go to this class, we got to do this. The kids aren't as into it as, oh, this is how we start our day with a reflection, mindfulness. I think especially now, post-pandemic, people are really realizing, hopefully, I think finally, how important mindfulness and mental health is. It sounds cliche even that I'm saying this. I feel like I hear this all the time, but that's what I think that's good. I think music is an incredible way to feel that, to be relaxed, to be mindful.
there's so much research too. There's so much data
So much, yeah.
proving it. That's something that I've been digging into more for Second Line. So Bryce and I, we had so much in common about what Second Line Arts Collective is trying to do, what Bryce and his team are trying to do, and then also like I think both of us had a lot in common with Sleepy. He was a great dude to connect with.
So a lot. Yeah, I feel like overall the time at the conference part was sort of brief, but it was incredibly concentrated with impactful conversations and impactful learning and just
and that good barbecue, baby.
Sure. The sauce was good. The barbecue sauce was good.
So, all right. So there was, I think we both loved the people we met. Fire in Little Africa was amazing. These other sessions that were more about placemaking and urban planning didn't exactly.
Doesn't resonate as much with us. I think
it's not really what we care about. If you could have subbed in some topics yesterday.
I definitely wanted to hear more about some of the things that we were looking forward to that we missed were some things about more technology in music stuff.
Music and technology.
We're using technology in music. They had some panels about that we missed. I think we got an incredible dose of using music for social change, but there was also another panel about that might have been pretty cool to check out more about that. I'm always interested in those kind of topics for sure.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like Bryce talked on a panel about music and youth development.
Inclusivity, I think, is what was one.
That was the one that he was interested in.
Oh, gotcha. Right.
That ended up being like about business plans. We'll get the story from him. Yeah. But he spoke on music and youth development, which is very much my shit.
Right. That's what it was. Cool. And then, I think that's pretty much what maybe would have been nice to hear more of. I hate to even say that to a certain extent, just because, again, how much I was impacted by that documentary. So I don't want to take anything away from that, you know?
What about Tulsa?
Tulsa, if at all during the recording of this, you hear people outside, it's because there's a beer run that is going right.
Yeah, it's like a beer mile, a beer mile and fun run happening.
Yeah. So you can hear the people outside a little bit, maybe.
Oh, and police? I don't know.
Yeah, it's all good. Everyone's having a good time from what we can tell. We'll splice in some footage. I have a little bit of footage of us walking through it.
I mean, it looked like a lot of just happy people, but they had to be all like professional drinkers because it's 1 mile run with 5 beers.
Was it 5 beers?
You get 5 beers.
And the one we saw that they were pouring was like a heavy stout type beer.
Yes, it was like almost black.
Yeah. I couldn't do it.
No, definitely not. These people, hey, mad respect to the middle-aged moms and dads of Tulsa, because that was the crew out there ready to slam 5 beers at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, it was early too. Yeah, definitely.
So Tulsa party is a little harder than we thought
but only during the day, because at night it's totally dead from what we could experience.
Yeah, so as part of the conference, there was not part of the conference. Every Friday, every year, there is a Friday night art crawl where
every week, I think.
I'm sorry, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
All year, but every week, every Friday, there's a Free Fridays art crawl where this is supposed to be music and open galleries.
There's supposed to be music too?
I think so.
Maybe we heard music. We heard something, but we didn't check it out. I guess maybe we could have walked over there.
It's because it
sounded bizarre. No offense.
Whack as hell.
No offense
to whoever. It just wasn't our thing. It sounded like live beatboxing and atonal synth chords.
Which maybe that's a future episode of Blind Duet.
I mean, attention, Cliff Hines would have been like, "Get me over there." Someone's calling me.
Right.
All right, so the art crawl it was also very cold and very rainy. There was a tornado warning last night. Yeah. So we're not painting this in the right light because we had a very wacky
but I mean, still
circumstances
fun. Still fun. Definitely there's some cool stuff over here.
Tulsa's cute. if you're a coffee fan,
Yeah, there's good coffee. Definitely good coffee out here. Topeka coffee is what I've been specifically drinking. If you guys want to, send us some beans or anything.
So yeah, send us beans.
Send us some beans.
I don't drink coffee, so you can send me a shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, the coffee's been good. The food has been pretty good.
I think downtown is pretty cute. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice.
We're in like an arts district, and there's tons of like really nice restaurants. It's very cute. It's a lot of almost not post-industrial, but it feels. I mean, hipster has a very derogatory connotation, but but hip. It is hip.
I think more and more too, as I travel around, cities are all kind of starting to have the same kinds of things at this point. Like everywhere's got a brewery, everywhere's got a beer garden, everywhere's got
the fancy
coffee shop, everywhere's got a juice place, everywhere's got a couple of vegan spots now, even in Tulsa.
So let me connect a couple dots that I wasn't connecting earlier. I went to college in Rochester, New York. And I remember there was a big end of year festival that I went to. Not end of year festival. It was a public festival in the city of Rochester called something to do with flowers. Rochester's very proud of their flowers. It was a little cute music festival. And when you show up there, they've got like funnel cakes, and you can buy.
I have no idea where you're going with this.
Okay, let me just cut to the chase. There's a music festival, and I talked with my ethnomusicology professor who went the same day. I just didn't see her, and she was like, "Did you notice anything about that festival?" And I said, "Yeah, there was nothing specific or unique about it. You could have cut and paste that festival in Boise, Idaho, in Nebraska, in Montana, in California. There was no sense.
Buffalo, New York.
Absolutely.
Well, you're in New York. Anyway. It's close enough. Yeah.
But you could have hosted that thing 150 miles away in Buffalo,
Topeka, Kansas. Even.
And if someone was teleported in, they would have no idea of the local, any kind of local pride or identity. And Rochester is not a huge town. Tulsa is not a huge town. Tulsa is very proud of Tulsa.
That's a good point. And I think that is maybe what made the trip cool too. Like that's what made this experience cool. Like even having the Music Cities conference here, there is a lot of music and culture in this small city.
Yeah, it's got a lot of stuff going for it. I've enjoyed my time here, and like Fire in Little Africa again made a pretty big impact of folks really wanting to put Tulsa and Oklahoma on the map and say, here's who we are, here's what we do. Like that is just not anything I experienced in Rochester in any form. And so I just really appreciate that. That's the kind of,
I think.
Yeah,
like,
I really admire
sure.
that. And it makes me more interested in Tulsa. Like why are you so proud? There must be some really cool stuff going on here all the time.
Yeah.
So
and really close community as well.
Yeah.
It seems.
Yeah.
So yeah. Any other final thoughts before we just wrap this up?
Go buy Fire in Little Africa.
Definitely buy the vinyl, buy the CD, or I think they just have it on vinyl. Go stream it. Apple Music, Spotify, wherever you get your music from, wherever you get your podcast from, it's going to be there.
Do you still have Sleepy's information? I wanted to share.
I do. We'll put it in the.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show.
I don't want to say that his 501c3. I don't want to say the wrong title.
Yeah, we'll put it. We'll link it. We'll put some information here. This will be on YouTube finally. Not to call my shot here, but at some point this will be on.
I'll believe it when it is edited and actually on
YouTube. Okay, fair enough. But you asked for video content. We're bringing some video content, and hopefully we can do more stuff like this. I think this has definitely been a tangent from our usual podcasting of connecting people, but not only do we love connecting people, we love highlighting people who are already connected in communities. We love highlighting and talking about music communities, which actually, believe it or not, was one of the original ideas for our first podcast, was talking about music scenes in other cities.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like that. And then also we ourselves love connecting with other artists and other musicians and being out here and kind of, in a way, creating our own, not making music together, but creating our own, doing what we do for other people ourselves, I guess, to a certain extent, connecting ourselves. So we can also then connect more people, right? That's what we're trying to do. Build this community, build this global blind duet community of artists and musicians and producers that can all like, oh, we're in Tulsa. Well, I know so-and-so in Tulsa and I can connect with them. Or I'm traveling through Washington. Oh yeah, well, so-and-so lives up there. Or Italy, got Charles Burchell out there.
Right.
You know, all these people that we've been working with, Chris and Andorra, that is our goal. And I think coming out here and connecting with more people, we were able to, if nothing else, do that.
Move the ball forward a little bit.
So I'm really happy with this trip. Again, very impacted and affected by seeing that documentary. And yeah, hopefully it sparks more conversations that we'll get to have with other people, as well as when you guys listen to it and watch the documentary as well. Because I think it's up on YouTube. You can have conversations and learn.
Email us.
blindduetpod@gmail.com. blindduetpod@gmail.com.
We'll talk about the documentary.
Yeah,
with
we'll
you.
talk about it. Yeah, if you want to talk about it, talk to us about it. I think we'd love to have more conversation. That's the point, I think, again. All right, that's it. That's the podcast.
That's the podcast?
Yeah, that's it. We might do some other like small stuff, but that's the main thing.
Okay. And another thing,
No. Thank you guys for listening. As always, we appreciate everyone that decides to click play on one of our episodes. This is something we've been working on for a long time. We're really proud of, and we're going to keep working on it. That's the podcast. Goodbye.